Well, okay. Look at us, you and I, back here together again. Thank you so much for being here and getting to listen to this latest share, this latest conversation, this latest episode. And in this episode, I got to sit across from Andrea Clark, co-creatrix of Nectar Yoga. And we sat in the dome at Nectar Yoga. We sat a yoga mat length distance away at the front of the dome where you would teach from. And we sat on bolsters and shared this time together, and it was beautiful and wonderful, and you'll hear all the things that there is to learn very soon. So how I got connected with Andrea, how I got connected with Nectar Yoga, I went there about a year ago now, actually. So we're in August now, and I went there last September, and that was my first visit, my first ever stay there, and I was there on on trade purposes. I was there to do some photo work, and so I captured a few things for them. I did some yoga photos, and I did some other captures of the space and the property and the architecture, and we did some captures of food, which was just the most exciting. And so that was that was the first time I went there, and that's how I got connected with the space. My very good friend Alira, she works there, and so she's been my connection, which has been so wonderful, and I'm very grateful for her, and I'm very grateful for all of Nectar Yoga, and Andrea, of course, included. So thank you to all of them for getting me into this space where I get to share my work and my heart and my passions with like-minded individuals. There's like nothing better than this, as you know. And so I met Andrea there first time, and we shared a few conversations, and I found her to be quite lovely, very warm, soft, and yeah. And then I asked her a couple months ago now if she would want to do a podcast episode with me, and she was totally keen. And so that's how we got to this space. And so lately with Nectar Yoga, in the last few months, I shared that I would like to do photography with the guests as an add-on service. And I want to take this time to do one-on-one sessions with the guests and to continue in their yoga retreat experience and to tie in all of the yoga teachings and practices and stuff into the photography sessions. And so again, they were on board. So I've been working with them, and I've been going to Bowen Island actually quite a lot this summer, getting to do these sessions with the guests. And so we've called this embodied expression and mindful photography sessions. And so now I'm like part of the furniture there. And yeah, I've been getting to spend time on Nectar, and I got to do a whole weekend recently, which was really beautiful. And so that's my little connection to this very special place. So I'll share a little bit about Andrea here for you. And yeah, here we go. Andrea Clark is a functional somatic movement teacher and the co-creatrix of Nectar Retreat Center and Mist Thermal Healing. She discovered early in her life that nature and solitude are her most potent healers. With ancestry from Scotland, Ireland, and Scandinavia, Andrea was born and raised close to the Rocky Mountains in Canada. Andrea's journey, weaving through the realms of fine arts, design, movement exploration, and with an inherent gift for architecture, led her from the corporate world into the heart of yoga and spiritual exploration. Immersing herself in the teachings of revered artists and mentors, Andrea's extensive travels from India to St Lucia to Hawaii and beyond shaped her holistic approach to well-being. Her studies encompass traditionally rooted yoga, meditation, ayurveda, and functional movement, culminating in her role as global retreat leader. So you'll hear a little bit about this in the episode, some of her travel stories and how it all came to be. We'll talk a little bit about Mist. And I was able to attend one of Andrea's classes on the first retreat that I did back, the first one in September. And it was magnificent. I took actually quite a lot from it. There was so many things that I know that if you are a teacher, if you're in another teacher's class, sometimes you see certain things or you hear certain things and you're like, boy, oh boy, that is good. So then you work with it and you honor the teacher, you honor the teachings, but you work with it and you're like, man, that's a beautiful cue or a nice shape or anything like that. And Andrea's got it. She's got it dialed in. So if you have the opportunity to take one of her classes, would recommend that you do that. And then my last share for this, before we get into this conversation, I just want to share that my code with B Half Moon has changed because things are changing. Things are changing over here. So it is now Whitney 15, and this gifts you with 15% off of your entire purchase with B Half Moon. So Tulā Yoga is out. Those days are gone, and we are changed. We are into Whitney 15 now, and I'm going to change it on all the episodes. But that's the new code. And fun fact, I tested the code on sale items because they have quite a few items that are on sale right now. And I was like, I wonder if the code works, because it probably doesn't, but it does. It does work on already on sale items. So hook it up if you're interested in something like that. Since they've merged companies, I have been gifted with some essential oil blends that I used at some of my events. They're wonderful. They have candles now. They have other products other than yoga mats and bolsters that are supportive for your journey, your well-being, and all of that good stuff. So take a little gander, and Whitney 15 is the code. Okay, my friends, thank you so much for being here. I'm looking forward to hearing what you discover and what you have to say. Okay, I'm here with Andrea, which is lovely, and thank you so much for allowing me to do this and share this space with you.
Thank you.
If you want to take this time to introduce yourself and share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Andrea, and my other name is Amrita, and I actually use it. When I was younger, I went to India, and I stayed for a while at an ashram, did my first training, and so on. We'll probably get into that later. And at the end of the training, they offered names, like new names to everyone. And a lot of the names that I know in the past they had given to people were, like the Hindu gods and goddesses, which were beautiful. But they did ask, like, what type of name do you want? They didn't actually take that into account for most people, I don't think. But I wanted something neutral, like something beautiful and neutral. Yes. Was my choice, if I could pick. And then they said, your name's Amrita, which is beautiful, and that is often translated in English as the divine nectar or eternal nectar, or goddess, just a general name for goddess. So hence the name of Nectar. And I was born and raised in Calgary and Edmonton in Alberta, and I moved here to the Pacific Northwest when I was 19 to go to Emily Carr, and I never looked back. I just feel like when I landed here, it was home. And I lived in Vancouver for a long time, traveled a lot, and there's a whole story, but ended up on Bowen, and we're in our 10th year of being here, which is really, really cool. And so, I've studied, I'm very passionate about art, design, beautiful objects, but I'm also passionate about letting go of attachment to those things. And recently I've been exploring, like, how much does that really matter, actually? Mm-hmm. Because I used to put a lot of weight on it and feel a lot of discomfort if I was in an environment that I didn't find aesthetically comfortable, pleasing, and so on. And I think I put myself in a lot of physically uncomfortable situations to explore that, to play with it.
Like on purpose.
Yeah.
And so, like, what would be an uncomfortable, like, it was just maybe not what means uncomfortable? Like, is it not only not aesthetically pleasing, or is it
Yeah.
also maybe, is it dirty? Like, what
Yeah.
what what was that for you? Like, what would be an uncomfortable place?
Oh gosh, I want to share like a more recent example,
Yeah,
but I'm
okay.
worried if I do that the person might listen to this.
I was gonna say try and keep it as broad as possible.
So I'll give a different example.
Okay.
Like Sat and I, my husband and I, by the way, we co-created this beautiful space together. And actually, although yes, we're business owners, and yes, we're entrepreneurs, and yes, we're creative people, like I actually do consider myself to be vibing with this land, a steward of this land, like a caretaker here.
Yeah.
I happen to reside here as well, but the land has an energy field of its own that we've created, and that exists here before we even came. And so, yeah, we co-created this together. But we traveled the world, and we didn't have a lot of money at that time. And so a lot of the situations that we found ourselves in were extremely uncomfortable. Like no AC, it's 35 degrees in the night. I hope that it doesn't have bugs in it. I hope that the sheets are kind of clean. Like, there's just a lot of those type of situations where I felt like I was going to die from like being overheated.
Yes.
But those are good because you do assess, this idea of comfort and discomfort and like and dislike and the light and the dark and all of these things. And this is a practice. And so I've decided recently that beauty is important to me, but beauty as a means to connect with the divine. And I also think that for myself, when I'm in a beautiful space and when I create something that I think is beautiful and aesthetically pleasing, it's a way for other people to connect with the divine, not only from an external object, but also within themselves. And because nectar inherently attracts the divine feminine, like the yin. Of course, there's all people that stay here, not to at all genderize it, but there is a lot of like Shakti here in this space.
Yeah.
People that come here are equally as attracted to that. And so now I think for me, I like, if I have a mug, I share this sometimes, like if I have a mug, I want to have a mug that is like handmade by a local artisan and that I love. That mug not is an exact example. She's drinking out of an IKEA mug at the moment. We can't have those at Nectar because they get broken. At a certain point you realize there's practicality too. But like in my own house, like we live a very minimal life and we've kind of pared down our life. So we have a few objects and the ones that we have we really love. And then for me also, it's important to share these things, because that's one of the ways we can kind of like surrender and release our attachment, with the example of the broken mug, right? If we have beautiful objects and we just hoard them and keep them for ourselves, then the attachment's like really thick. The cord is pretty thick. Yeah. Whereas like having a space where, hundreds of people move through in a month, you gotta let go.
You have
like,
to, yes.
You can't
Even
be seeking
the
perfection.
Too,
yeah, just okay. Yeah, something got dinged, something got broken, and we built this space brand new. But then at a certain point, like there are little quote unquote imperfections and like little dings, but I feel like that also adds so much character to a space. And it's like, I know where that came from. Like, oops, I accidentally dropped the ladder through the drywall one time because I was trying to fix something before a group arrived. And then there's a little ding in the wall and I'm like, yep, that's how that happened. I'll fix it one day. And so these kind of things, like, offer up what you have, and that's the way we can also have like a more abundant mindset, because it's like, it's not just mine, I can't take any of this with me. So I want to share what I have. Yeah,
and I feel like you having this this natural thing where you're trying to work with it and practice it and get maybe over it, of like not wanting to be uncomfortable in places, also makes you a very good retreat owner, or someone who wants to run a retreat or anything like that, or create these spaces where people have to stay. And it runs through everyone's mind. It runs through mine. And I know it runs through so many, like when you're coming here. I remember the first time I came here, I was like, well, what are the facilities like? Am I going to be comfortable? Am I going to have my needs met? And I found that it exceeded that for me, because I was like, oh, okay, I actually have like a lot of things available to me, and nothing felt at a lack at all. I knew that everything, and now I look forward to coming back, because I'm like, oh, everything is taken care of. And that comes from, I think, that place of you being like not comfortable in these situations, or knowing what it's like to be like, I don't have this, and like my need isn't met, you know?
Yeah.
And so that helps.
Yeah.
It helps.
And I think you become like more discerning because I've traveled so many places and I've been to so many beautiful places, and I get inspiration from a lot of things, which I love. And then I like pull little pieces from wherever it is that I go, because people often ask these general questions like, so how did you figure out how to create this space, or what was the inspiration behind it, like as if it was one thing. And I think that that's a really beautiful question, by the way, and it's a very innocent question, and it's a lovely question. And someone asked me that yesterday.
I think it's a big thing for stuff. Sorry to interrupt, but you know, I feel like it's a big thing for people to do this. This is like such a massive undertaking for someone to do, and it could also be like completely out of someone's understanding or wheelhouse of like, how in the hell did you do this, or what makes you do this, or how can you do this? You know? So somebody asked you yesterday, so, like that question.
And I was like, this question is getting harder actually, because the thing is, it's anyone who's maybe listening to this who the other comment that I get a lot, and again, it comes from such a good place, is you know, you're living my dream, or this is exactly what I would want to do.
Yeah. I'd imagine you hear that a lot.
Yeah, I do. And I think, like, good luck with all of that, because we need a lot of luck in these. I have, like, my mom says I have horseshoe up my ass. Because it's like, some things are just, there's some synergy behind it, there's some synchronicity behind it, there's energy behind it from a source that's way bigger than you.
That's right.
And I do like tap into, I like call on my ancestors, my guides, the spirits of this land, the people in my life, you know, my friends, my family. This is a co-creation. This came from, the initial seed definitely was from me, and then also my husband. But it's a co-created space, and it continues to evolve. Like, we started in one way, and now we have layered on so many pieces, but I think that a lot of people just see the end result and then wonder like how, and it's like, well, everything's in a flow, and everything is evolving as we go. And you know, we just launched our Nectar teas, and we have a whole line of products and all of these kind of things, which is, I love, but I couldn't have done that all from the jump
without the
you can't. Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe because I feel like there's a corporate-ism there, where it's like, if you have a big team of investors and like a great marketing company, and you go into it like this is a business, right? And you're building this chain or something, or like this possible thing that you're going to replicate, then maybe all those components are there from the beginning. But for me, it's been more of a solo journey, and one that continues to evolve and progress as I get older, and I take on things that I think will be a beautiful addition to what I'm offering, but that don't tip the scale in some way. You know, and I talk a lot about that with anybody I work with, like entrepreneurs or anything like that are wanting to do something. They like want to start something, and there's a lot of resistance or hesitancy or fear to get the ball rolling, because it's really challenging to get that going, and then they see the end result, and you just don't even do anything, because you're like, it's just too massive, how am I ever going to get there? But it's baby steps, like everything is just little by little, and like planting seeds, and like you'll probably see, I'm sure you've seen that, like all of your seeds that sprout that you did 10 years ago, connections that you made, or choices that you made, or maybe even the tea idea could have been there the whole time. A long time ago.
Yes, the whole time. And now we're in the place that we do this. And it just takes that time, and to not rush into things, you know. And I'd be curious to actually go back to that even original space for you of like doing your yoga training, and that seed in and of itself, like what was going to India to do your training. Is that the first training you had ever even done? And you just like went into that? Were you practicing yoga and then you went there, and
Yeah.
how did that?
How much time do we have?
We have till the end of time.
So I feel like my personal practice and teaching has evolved so much, and yoga informs the way that I live as a practice and as a beautiful, beautiful system. And now my teaching is, it's all of yoga and even a little bit more diverse than that too. So that's the first thing. And Nectar really is a space for somatic practice, but it's also just it is a space for gathering, for holding all people. And I feel like that is the living yoga as well. But going back to my like kind of inward journey, from a young age, I have always had I actually considered it to be very negative, but because I don't know if my family really even knows this per se, but I had a really deep connection to this other world, the spirit world. And it used to scare me a lot because when I was younger, for a period of time, I couldn't sleep. And without getting into too many family systems things,
which is why we discovered the yoga. We're here, we know.
Yeah. At night, when the veil is definitely thin, and it's like that's not something that someone told me. That's just something I actually experienced. So it's nice in some ways when you experience these things, because then when people say it, you're like, well, yeah, it is a thin time. And different times of the year, like in Alberta, when it's minus 30 outside, you're inside, right? And it's dark, and there's this cocoon, this energy in the house. And so I knew from a young age that I had this ability, which I consider to be a disability, of connecting with spirit. And like I had very clear visions and connections and so on, all this stuff. And then as I got a bit older, I found that it was overwhelming. So there was a lot of things happening in my family life and world that I shut that right off. Like it no longer happened for quite a long period of time. But there was always a really, really good gut instinct that I've had, and call it intuition, call it, bigger knowing, and this assessment of people. Like I've always been a good read of a person. Like when I meet someone, I can feel them. And it's not to say that that's the entirety of them, because actually one of the things that I'm really passionate about is I don't want to be put in a box.
That's right.
Please don't put me in a box, because I am so multi-layered. It's hard to understand me, even for me. I don't want to put anyone else in a box. So I try to really get rid of the boxes, because as soon as we do that, then it others people. But the point in sharing that is that when I got into my 20s, like most 20-year-olds, like I was an idiot, I was, doing all the things that 20-year-olds do. And trying to find my way through so many means, through people, through boyfriends, through partners, through substances, through partying, through art and creation. But I'm really grateful because one of my good friends at the time, her partner was a yoga teacher, and he started a small studio in Vancouver, and it was just opening, and she had invited me to go.
What year was this?
I'm bad with years.
It's okay.
I don't know. I was young. I was maybe 20.
Okay.
2021.
Right. And which studio was it at the time?
I don't remember even what it was called.
Wow.
I don't know if it had a name. It was just a little
it's
studio,
like a place.
On West 4th Avenue above some of the shops there.
Okay.
In this little courtyard, it was his private little space.
Amazing.
And he had a small following here in Vancouver. And he has a whole story, and I feel like that's a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
but basically, she invited me to go. Now, previous to this, my only yoga like experience, and I'll put yoga in quotation marks, was at a gym because my parents lived in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and it's this bright gym, and they were doing this kind of like vinyasa, yelling out with a microphone.
That's the first place I did yoga. It was a gold gym.
Yeah, and it was, I hated it. I was like, I can't breathe, I can't move, I can't do any of these postures. I felt out of breath. I didn't like it. I was like, no, yoga's definitely not for me. But I had no idea what yoga really was. So I went to this class, and it was the first time in such a long time that I felt deeply relaxed. So much so that I went into Shavasana and I like didn't get up. He was sitting, I just remember him sitting next to me and being like, Andrea, and all the students were gone. And I was like, what just happened? And I'm like, I wasn't sleeping. I was just in a really, really deep meditative
You made it to that
state.
place. Yeah.
And I thought, holy shit, like this is really profound. Mm-hmm. And so I kept going back. And it turns out he's like an amazing teacher. His name is Sri Venu. He no longer lives in the West Coast, but he studied with directly with Swami Vishnudevananda, who's like a teacher of our time. He's no longer embodied, but his teachings definitely live on. Who's a disciple of Swami Shivananda, who is one of the major teachers in India. He wrote over 300 books. He was a medical doctor, and then he became a renunciate and traveled all over India. He started the Divine Life Society. Swami Vishnudevananda has started many ashrams all over the world. They've trained, I think, over 40,000 or more now, and counting, yoga teachers. And that was my first entry point into this beautiful system. And there was a lot of turmoil in my life, a lot of discovery, a lot of darkness, a lot of everything. But through all of that, yoga helped to inform me and guide me, luckily. And I ended up just deciding, and now keep in mind, I came from Alberta. My family, we're middle class, but we didn't have a lot of extra money. If we went on a vacation and be like, we're going camping, we are going, to the lake. We didn't go to Mexico. Like now all the kids in my life, they're going to, they've been on more trips than I have. Mm-hmm. It's just a different world. And I recognize that's not every kid. I'm not saying that, but, so this was one of my first trips at all. Never mind, and to go to India
what a place to go. Yeah,
it's a far off land in my mind at that time where I was at. Mm-hmm. And even so much so that a lot of people are like, India, why would you go to India?
Yeah.
But something was calling me there, and I took my training and I discovered a lot about myself, and I traveled a little bit, and I went all alone. And I just think about little baby Andrea going to Mumbai.
And you were like 20
at
that time?
It's just I don't know, because I'm not the best with direction and stuff, but somehow I figured it all out, and I met some people along the way, and I stayed in touch with them. And honestly, I never went to be a teacher in any way. I just wanted to know more about myself.
There was a pull.
There was a pull there, and I definitely learned a lot about myself. And that was the first time that I had even heard of the concept that you're not your mind. I was like, well, how can I not be my mind? And starting to actually understand that there is a separation there through practice and witnessing. And it's been a 20-year plus now journey, and I've done, as with all things, many, many different trainings and work with many beautiful people. And it's a life practice.
Yeah.
So,
and then you were given this, your name. And did you connect with that, the meaning of the name right away, that the meaning sparked something in you? Or was it when you were thinking of doing this, you're like, what should we call it? And it came from that place where, because sometimes I think I have stuff that comes to me and I hold on to it for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And then I'm like, but there's something I need to use with this. There's something I need to use with that. Or I'm just brainstorming, and then I think, and it comes from that place. Yeah.
I think that it connected with me because when you go to certain ashrams, they'll use your name, your spiritual name, mm-hmm. not the name that your parents gave you. Mm-hmm. And so people knew me as Amrita in a lot of places.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started to like actually answer to it and feel like I was more embodying that.
Yeah.
And it's like, who doesn't want a little bit more sweetness? I needed it because
Yeah.
I had some hard edges.
Yeah.
And still do, of course.
Of course.
And
you'll have them forever.
yeah. So yeah, it was starting to, I think it was given to me at the perfect time, offered to me, and you don't have to use it. I mean, you don't, but when Sat and I, we were traveling at another point in time, we took a year sabbatical from our lives and our jobs and so on. And we traveled first through India, and we were on a train ride anyway, it's a whole story, but we were going in the wrong direction. We were also on the wrong train, and we didn't have a seat. And it was the train that's like completely open, like there's no windows, there wasn't even a door. And it's the most dirty that I've ever been. Like,
so very uncomfortable.
Yeah, like just
for you,
really,
especially.
really.
Yes.
Like my hair was just solid from that. Like it was crispy solid. But we were on this train ride, and we were thinking, wow, like this is such an experience, and you're going through all these little towns where people have very little like physical possessions. And life is a lot more simple in many ways, and you see it, like you're witnessing it, and people are living right along the train. It's India, so there's people everywhere. In most of these places, even though it's rural, it's still pretty packed compared to, where we live. And we were like, we gotta make some changes. Like I don't think we want to live in the city anymore. Like I don't know if I want to live an urban life and work in the corporate world and do all of these things as much anymore. So the seed was planted then, and we thought, Nectar, like that's the name of what we're going to create when we go home. And there you go. Like sometimes it's just that simple.
Right.
Yeah.
And that took you to Bowen? Like,
kind of.
That, you're like, there's a workaround there.
Sort of.
Yeah.
So we traveled for a year. We traveled in a way that, like we went from Vipassana center to Vipassana center. We went from ashram to ashram. We went and did like, Iyengar training. We did Thai yoga massage therapy training. Like we got our palms read. We did all those things. We didn't do any drugs. We like hardly drank or anything at all.
Which is good.
Lots of people were doing that.
Yeah.
And actually I think if I were to go now, like I probably would do all the drugs and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I don't know. Who
Right.
knows? I was just in a very different phase. Like I wanted to be really, really, really present with all that was presented to me, because it was like a whole other world. Mm-hmm. And the purpose of that trip was a journey of self-exploration and couple exploration, because at that time, Sat was only with me, I think we're together for maybe a year and a half.
Not very long.
So that was like, and for me, it's always like when I was dating, it's like spend a weekend with a person or go away with them for a week, and then you'll know.
Yes.
Like at the end of that, whether you're going to vibe with them. Of course, everyone's capable of change and stuff, but some people we can reside with, and some people it's harder.
Yeah.
So, and Sat was such a perfect travel companion and easy person, and we knew like if we got at the end of that trip after a year together, and we were always together, like,
which is it's a challenging
challenge.
place to be also.
Yeah.
This is not like you went to like, I don't know, San Francisco, whatever, and you're just kind of like living, and it's not no different than really being here.
Yeah.
This is a challenging place to be in and of itself. Everything is different.
Yeah.
And your hair's dirty.
Everything's dirty.
Yeah.
And we're living out of a backpack, and like we didn't know where we were staying. This was even before that. Really, like, it sounds so funny, but like we have changed in 10 years and 12 years and 13 years, like how much we rely on our phones and how we can just book something on, some online booking system. But we would show up in a place and just like go from hotel room to like there are many little hotels or whatever, people's kind of homes with a thing in them, and just check it out and negotiate a price and then stay there. Like we didn't have any plan. We literally, the only thing we knew is like where the plane was going to take us, and we would land in a place, and then we would figure everything out from there. And we would go look at the local bulletin board and find out maybe there's like a sound thing happening or a yoga class or some kind of breath thing, like the community stuff. So anywhere we went, we were trying to weave into the local culture and community. And so through that experience, we learned a lot about obviously ourselves, B, a lot about each other, and C, a lot more about what we really wanted to do here on this planet.
Yeah.
Because you're so removed from what your normal, your everyday normal,
Right.
that anything's possible. You can do anything.
Yeah, and you're able to weave in new understanding as well. You're able to, like, anytime I've been traveling or stayed somewhere a long time, I've been able to think, oh, I want to bring this home with me, or this understanding home with me, or I want to start living this way.
Yeah.
And you don't have that if you just stay put in what you know and like what is familiar to you. You need to see how people are living.
Yeah.
To be like, oh, that's possible. People can do that. Okay, then I can do that. Yeah. And it helps.
Especially those of us who live like we do.
Yeah.
And amongst and in an immense amount of privilege.
Yes.
Not only because of skin color, but also because of where we're born and so on. The privileges go on. And so to witness and experience something that is vastly different from that is extremely important, I think.
I think so too.
And it was important for my consciousness.
Yeah, and I think it's like just beneficial. I always say to everyone, like sometimes I'll just connect with 20-year-old people or like girls, whatever, and they'll start talking, I really want to go traveling, and I've been meaning to quit this job and go traveling. I'm like, well, you got to do it, my girl. Like, you got to go, because you will discover so much and you will learn so. They don't have to go to some place that lacks a ton of privilege. They just need it for themselves to be able to know, like, yes, I can go alone. Yes, I can problem solve. I have some sort of confidence now that comes out of this, different understanding. It's very supportive for their consciousness, their well-being, to be able to do that and to prove. Like, I feel like I proved a lot to myself. I'm sure you did too. You're like, I can do it. I'm bad at directions, but I can do it. Like, and that's nice.
It is really nice.
It is. And then so you came home, and because when I was here on my first day, you did our orientation, which was absolutely excellent, and I learned a lot about Bowen, and I thought that it was so nice that you honored Bowen and the lands here, and you knew quite a bit about this space, and you taught us about Bowen, and so did you putz around to a few of the Gulf Islands and just see what was it an island in your mind even too, like for something like this? How did that come to be?
So we came home and we had this vision, and it was 2013, and there's this, like, still this weird ripple residual from like the 2008, like, things here in Canada in terms of property and stuff, like, we're going down, like, still going down. Like, they kind of hit bottom. If you look at the charts and stuff, like, the real estate prices on Bowen Island were lowest 2013, 2014, maybe 2015, and then everything kind of changed. So in some ways we were lucky, again, like that sort of just luck, synchronicity, like timing piece.
The horseshoe.
Yeah, the horseshoe. And we didn't have a lot of money or anything. That's the other piece. Like, a lot of people ask me about that, and maybe that's something we can talk about. But I think there's this misconception that you just need to have all your financial, like, shit together. And that, I think that blocks a lot of people too, because they're like, well, I can't do that because of this thing. And there are ways, so I'm just saying that.
And I really like that you say that. Yes.
Yeah, I didn't come from. Yeah, if I need $100, like, I had to make it, kind of thing. So we came back to Vancouver. We actually had a really great rental situation off of Main Street. One of those old, houses that was kind of neglected, and the landlord just never came by. But we made it really funky, and we loved living there. So we rented it out while we were gone. And then when we came home, we had a place to still live, which was good. And we started looking I wanted to live on an island. I was thinking more tropical. Sat works in Vancouver. His company is based out of Vancouver. He has another job, by the by. He's an engineer full time. And so we needed to be close-ish to his job, because this is pre-work from home vibes. Like people were not working from home, especially not in his company. They were actually very opposed to it. They're like, no, if you work from home, you're not working.
You're not going to work. Yeah.
So we needed to live somewhere that was accessible to Vancouver, and his office was in Cole Harbour at the time, which meant there's not that many options. So our search was fairly narrow, and we were the first place we were looking was actually Gambier Island. We had put in an offer on a lot there. Oh, we also Passage Island, which is a very, very small little island in West Vancouver. Anyway, there's nothing on it. It's just a few houses. It's a really magical little place, but definitely not going.
It might not work. Yeah, it might not work for this. Yeah.
And like we had put in offers on different properties and houses, and nothing was working. And it was a little bit, we were at the place where it was disheartening, and we thought maybe this isn't the right move. Maybe this isn't meant to be. And then we started broadening our search to Bowen Island. And again, same thing, we were looking at lots and things. And at that time, because of this financial thing that I was talking about, like the financial crisis and everything was changing and shifting, and there was a lot for sale, like just so much inventory. So much so that if you came to Bowen Island at that time, you'd be like, why are there 200 properties for sale? Like that's a lot, because right now I think there's maybe like 35, 40 type of thing. It's a small island, so to have that many, you start to think, like, is there
leaving?
something wrong with this island?
Is
everyone leaving? But even if you went to the Sunshine Coast at that time, like I remember driving up to, up to a little cabin, and it's like all along the ocean, everything for sale, just everything was for sale. Because these islands in particular, and I don't know, this might not be like a fact, but I think that they still had secondary, homes on them. And if you are in a kind of not great financial situation, you're probably one of the things that you have to sell is your secondary property.
Right.
So a lot of the islands, the Gulf Islands, and even like the Sunshine Coast, I think many people were in that situation where they were just trying to sell.
I feel like this is before people even lived in these places fully too, because of that, as well. Like that wasn't really a big thing. It was like only vacation homes or things you could go to.
And this isn't like that long ago, but it's long
enough though.
There have been full-time, of course. There's a lot of people that lived on Bowen Island for generations and have lived here permanently, but I think the trajectory in the last several years is like people live here. That we live here 4 seasons. And you can see it even in the type of homes that are here. Like there's 3-season cottages and stuff that now people reside in all year, like pan abodes, and it's like they're okay in the winter, not the greatest, because they weren't really made for winter season. So we started looking on Bowen, and one day we just found this house, and we went and looked at it after looking at so many places, and again, like offers falling through and and it was just, we left and we're like, I think that's it. I think this is it. And so we put in an offer, and we got the house, and it was a really special house designed by an architect. His name is Barry Downs. I believe he's still alive. He's definitely in his 80s though. And he was one of the, we'll call him founders, but like one of the initiators of the West Coast Modern movement, which is cool, like a little design fact. But he actually built this as a cottage when he was a student in school. So it's old. But it's a beautiful home, and whenever anyone came there, they were like, it's so modern, but it was built like in the 60s, which is cool because it just goes to show that good design is timeless.
That's right.
And then the previous owners that were there, he was like a very, very finite craftsperson and finishing carpenter and cabinet maker, so the entire house was like, everything was to the 1/16. It was very, very precise. And living in a house like that was special because the type of, you don't get that kind of craftsmanship unless you actually build it yourself. And even then, most people don't have that kind of ability. So it was cool to live in a house like that. Nothing will ever like live up to that standard, I don't think. Yeah. But we started there, and we started really small, and it had a little cottage in the back. So we thought, this is great. Like, we can have people come stay in the cottage. We'll use our living room to do yoga. We can eat at our dining table or serve the breakfast on a tray to the cottage. And that was it. Like, that's how we started. And we started because I reached out to all my students in Vancouver, because at that time I started teaching full time. So when we came home from traveling, during the year and a half that we were trying to, buy a property or something, I was like, well, I need to work. I need to do something. And I wasn't going to go back to my previous industry, which was design. So I started just teaching like 5-6 classes a day. It was, if you've ever done that, it's kind of crazy. And
it's definitely crazy.
I won't necessarily want to do that again, but
No.
it was good. And I built a community and went from this studio to that studio, this place to that place, teaching a lot. And then I reached out to everyone and I said, hey, this is my idea. Like, this is what it's going to be called. Who wants to come and just try it out? So the first several months were all people that I knew, and it was really beautiful. And that's how it started. And I thought in my mind, I'm like, wow, it'll be so cool when one day someone books through our online booking system.
And you don't know who they are?
Yeah, and I'm like, there'll be just this first person. I don't know who that person was, but I just remember when the booking came through, and it was such a cool feeling. And this was like before, Airbnb was literally just kind of starting on Bowen Island, and we were on Airbnb for maybe a little while, but we actually we're not on any of those things. We've only ever had like our own Nectar
I feel like
booking
this
system.
Type of space doesn't work for that.
Yeah,
fully.
not
It
as
needs
well.
to be not as well, and it's not exactly what you're trying to go for here, I suppose.
Yeah, it's like this is an experience, and also we decided somewhere along the line, because initially we would do, guests could come and stay and not do yoga or not do movement or not do breakfast. They could also just come and stay, but we were finding that it was most potent, what we were really trying to do, when we had people experience the whole package. Mm-hmm. So then we just made a decision, like, if you want to stay at Nectar, this is what it is. And of course, everything is optional here. Like, you don't have to come to everything, but it felt like it differentiated us from a lot of other short-term rentals, which we're not, because we are a retreat, and B, it felt just more aligned with our vision.
Well, yeah, and I feel that you want to attract the right type of person, so to speak. No one obviously gets turned away, but I find that, yes, if you just had people come stay here, they're not really going to be aligned with the space, aligned with the vision. Yeah. And it's something I really appreciate about being here, is that you are immersed, because again, like, when I had never been here before, so when I did my first ever weekend, I didn't know that I was with these same people all weekend. This was our group, and this is how we do this, and I loved it. Like, I was like, oh, this is amazing. I get to really connect with only this group of people. I didn't know what to expect. There could be other people coming and going, but there wasn't, right? And so I think that is unique in and of itself, and something that I had never really experienced before, and I really liked that.
Yeah, and I think as an extension of that, so the story kind of bounces, but when we set up shop on Bowen around the same time, I started to lead a lot of international retreats. So I was always here and also gone. So I would be teaching in Hawaii or Iceland or Morocco, and I would rent spaces and bring groups there. And it was amazing. And through that experience, I realized that I really wanted to be like in a particular property on a particular like type of land and curate this space myself, because traveling internationally with a group of people, it is beautiful. It's amazing. I loved it. Yeah. And there are challenges, and there's unforeseen things about spaces and just locations and
sometimes
countries.
I feel like you can't offer what you want, it like changes sometimes you're not able to do what you feel that you want to do, because everything is so kind of up in the air or changed, whereas here that you can give this certain experience, and you know that you're capable of it. Sometimes I get thrown off if I have a different type of space or some situation happens or whatever, and I want to do my best, and it completely throws you off. Yeah.
Or just like, I don't know, if you're in Morocco and sometimes the taxi driver didn't show up, or like there's a huge long line in the hot sun, or just things like things that happen, and we don't have control over those things, but some people react different ways to those things. So that's a long way of saying I did a lot of international teaching. It was amazing, and I do less of that now. In fact, I haven't done anything since COVID. But it's been beautiful to have people come to Nectar and to see the vibe of every group and how somehow through some means we all ended up here together. And there's energy of groups, like the one that's here right now. I was looking around and I'm like, guys, we all chose to be here, right now. And none of us know each other. It's so cool.
It's the best.
And we do check-in Monday, Wednesday, Friday here. So we have different groups coming in 3 days a week. Plus we do day retreats on Sunday. So every week we have about 50 people, maybe a little bit more coming through our space. Many returning guests, which is really beautiful. But there's synergy in different groups, and it's really cool to see. And it's way beyond me. Like this land and this space, as I said before, it has its own soul. And it attracts certain people that are seeking. Seekers.
And I know, like, you know, when I met you the first time and then I was leaving and I had said to you that the space is so beautiful, especially the onyx space, you know, and I said, like, architecturally it's wonderful, and like, and you said, I received thank you, I received that, because it's hard to receive too, like, and I think that I'm better actually with that now, and I'd imagine that you have a hard time with that just based on our conversation here, is that sometimes it's just hard to like accept, like, that's a nice thing, you know. And and I had said it was architecturally wonderful, and everything was beautifully designed, and it is true, because I hear it from all my connections, all my friends, all my students, whatever. They're so nice. I'm like, I know, you know. and so I'm curious. I would imagine did you design all of this space?
Yeah. I mean, so we're in right now, just for context, where we're doing the podcast, we're in the geodesic dome at Nectar. And like, domes have been around for a while. They were really big in the 60s. Probably not in North America. No, definitely not in North America, because in terms of like a living space, I mean, people live in them now, but they're challenging spaces.
Like,
they have a huge,
weather-wise?
Weather-wise.
Okay,
and they have a huge mass, like there's a lot of internal space to heat, and the ceiling's really high. But I always loved geodesic domes. But did I design a geodesic dome? Absolutely no, I did not. There's a company in the United States, which is where we got our first dome at Nectar I. And then, just for context, we did end up selling that property to 2 of our guests. They reside there with their kids, and they just live there, and we are still friends, and we go back and visit it.
Amazing.
And then we acquired this beautiful property in late 2017, and we started building everything here from the ground up.
Was the original dome the smaller size?
It's smaller, yeah. And then this dome is actually from Poland. And yeah, domes are just cool, and that's a whole conversation in and of itself, but they're extremely light, they're extremely strong, and I don't know. I always thought it'd be cool to practice yoga in a dome, so there we go. I think we were probably one of the first domes in Canada, and I'm basing that on all the questions that I've gotten over the years about them. Suddenly I become a dome expert. But I love geodesic domes, so that's the dome. But there's other pieces to this. So being from Alberta, when you drive through the prairies there's always barns, of course, and a lot of, barns that are dilapidated and have been abandoned and stuff. So when I was a kid, we used to sometimes go, probably on someone's land, probably not allowed to do this, but we would sometimes go and look inside the barns. And I always loved like the space of a barn and just like the open high ceilings and stuff. And I'm also did some genetic, tracing because I was curious to know where my ancestors came from. And it was interesting to find out that I have some Scandinavian ancestry. And I've always loved just the cleanliness and the simplicity and the deconstructedness of Scandinavian design. So I like to merge those two concepts of like living in the Pacific Northwest, being on the West Coast, the idea of the minimalism of the Scandinavian design, and then the idea of a barn space. So that created the lodge, all those concepts joined together.
Yeah, you can see the influence.
Yeah, and it's kind of as like lots of my ancestry in it, I guess. And that's something, yeah, that I designed and my husband designed. Our design process is we go and sit and have a beverage somewhere and get a napkin and start drawing on it. We have all of our original sketches, and then I'll open up my like bigger sketchbook and actually like put color to it and start to think about dimensions and where things go.
Right.
And then our A-frames were kind of a later addition. Like had already been building. We used a prefab type of construction. So we designed everything and it was panelized.
Yes. And they just basically put it up kind of thing.
Ish. Like that sounds easy.
Yeah, right.
It's not. It's kind of more complicated than that. But basically everything was prefabricated in panels from the lodge and the 3 bigger cottages by a company in North Vancouver. But we gave them our designs, and then they, like kind of made obviously the architectural, because I'm not an architect formally. I just love architecture and design. I don't claim to be an expert by any means, but it's just something I'm passionate about. So they took our designs, and made them into AutoCAD drawings, and then prefabbed it. Yeah. So that was that. And then while we were building, I'm like, I love A-frames. I've always loved A-frames. They were really big in the States specifically for like camping culture and like people who had homes on lakes. And then they lost popularity for a while for many reasons, mostly because that triangular space is a little hard to furnish and live in. There's so many angles. Well, the angle of it means there's some dead space. Yeah. But I wanted to have little A-frames. So yeah.
I think they make sense in this type of thing.
Yeah.
Like the
it
way
works
that you
as
have them.
one room.
Yes. Yeah.
When you're trying to live in an A-frame, you got to find more unique and interesting ways to utilize the space. But so design's a whole other conversation that I'm very passionate about.
Yep.
But in summary, yes, I did design everything here. Continue to.
Yes, right, of course. And when I came here, this is making a lot of sense now, because when I first came here, I was doing a photo trade. So I was taking photos of the space and what have you. And somebody said to me, we need you to capture the height of like how tall the A-frames are, the height of the ceiling, and just like how high it goes, whatever. And I can do that. So I did that, and they were, oh, that's great. Thank you, Whitney. That's so beautiful, whatever. And now in this conversation, it's making sense, because I would imagine that there was part of you that said, we must capture the height and how tall the ceiling is and how big the space is and how expansive it actually is, Yeah. And it's all kind of making sense now.
Yeah, and if we think of like the structure of a tent or like a teepee type of shape, or when I think about when a kid draws a home, like when you're young and you're in school and they say, draw your house and your family, and it's like always a box with a triangle on top, and like a triangle shape signifies home, and a square signifies home. Yeah. In North America, I know maybe in other places, maybe not, but
you're using your...
from like my perspective. So I wanted people to come here and feel like it's easy to find home.
Yeah, and
through the structure,
I think you've done that.
Space.
Yeah, and I think you've done that for sure, because there is, like I said, there's such comfort, and I felt that all of my needs got easily met, and I wasn't concerned about anything, and now I come here all the time. So now I'm like,
now she's here all the time. There's Whitney.
It's my home. Yeah.
Just popping out of the forest.
Hello.
She never left.
Never left. No. Soul was always here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And so then these structures came to be, of course, and all of these things unfolded, and you moved to this new land.
Yeah.
And have had many visitors from the wall, because I see on the wall all the signatures, and they've actually, when I was here last week, somebody said, oh wow, people are writing on this wall now.
Yeah,
like,
our other wall is filled up.
Yeah.
The wall actually came from, so my grandfather, he passed away a couple years ago at 97.
Good for him.
Yeah, well, stubbornity really, but
moving on.
Yeah. And he, in his house, so he lived in this kind of like cool, really, like if you walk, it's actually they tore it down, but it was like when you walk in there, you're basically in a time warp, and everything he had at the time, like in the 50s, really late 50s, the house was built. It's from that era, but he did everything like super high end at that time. So it's so interesting, because you see all these things coming back now, like the terrazzo tile, and he had like pog and pole kitchen and stuff. But anyways, in the basement, he had a black and white room. It was all black and white. The carpet was black and white. He had these big, huge stuffed dogs that were black. One was black, one was white. The sofa was black. And then he had this black and white wallpaper of all these kind of mod, like, women. Beautiful, like, 60s style women. And then on one wall, he had a wall where anyone who came over from the 50s to when he passed away would go down to the black and white room and sign the wall. And I'm kind of bummed that somehow we couldn't have, like, actually preserved that.
The wall.
But it was, like, on the drywall.
Yeah.
But when we started Nectar, yeah, I wanted to do that. I wanted everyone who has walked through this space and been on this land to sign.
Yeah.
And because it's like there's a in a signature, it's like there's an energy to it. It's a piece of a person.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have to put so much weight on it, but it is really beautiful to be like, all these people stayed here. So we have one wall, it's like really, really full. So
it's very full, yeah.
And I'm like, oh gosh, now we're going to have to paint the whole place black. And it'll just be, but anyway, we got to draw a line somewhere. And I'm actually creating like a new little vision, which is a prayer wall. We're going to start it next week. So coming soon, so that people can place whatever it is that they're releasing, whatever it is that they're wanting deeply, their prayers on this land and hold it here like in a paper form. Yeah. And then once a year, we're going to take all the prayers and burn them in like a sacred fire, probably at the solstice.
Beautiful.
Yeah. So it's going to be a cool little art installation project in the lodge.
Yeah, I think that eventually, of course, that will fill on that wall, and then you'll have, now you. Good thing you're thinking. I'm glad you're thinking about that because you're gonna run out of space, obviously.
Yeah.
And then so yes, this space comes to be, and I now like you have started this new project of Mist, and I feel excited about that because it's just wonderful, and you can, of course, tell us about Mist, share about Mist, but was that something that was like a seed the same way the tea was 10 years ago or something like that? Was that something that's you've been sitting with for a long time too?
Yeah, so Mist, well, this is the first time I've really spoken about it because we've been, if I'm honest, like trying not to talk about it too much, and not because I didn't want people to know, but mostly because as soon as you speak to it, then people are like, when's it going to be ready?
That's
when's
right.
it? And we learned with Nectar, like, I was trying to be business savvy and all that before when we opened here. So I took a whole bunch of bookings thinking, oh, we have lots of time and we'll complete everything in time. And then it was very, very stressful, like getting open for our bookings that we had. Yeah. And it took like a personal, physical, energetic, and relationship toll, pushing that hard for so many months beforehand, because a project like this, it's big and there's a lot of unforeseens with all construction.
Takes time, yeah.
So I learned my lesson, but we live and we learn, and a sprinkle of naivety with all these things is good. Yeah. It's a good thing. Yeah. And so for this one, we decided we're not having a specific opening date because of the reason that I just said, like it'll happen when it happens. Right. We thought about Mist for a long time because, hot cold therapy is an old practice amongst so many different, around the world, so many different cultures, traditions. And at our old property, my friend, who is of Finnish descent, her dad built a sauna, all from the wood on their property. And she had to move from the island, and she wanted the sauna to go to someone who like had reverence for it, because it's like a sacred space for her. They sauna'd every day. But she couldn't take it with her because she was moving pretty far away. But the sauna happened to be on wheels. So we bought the sauna and we started using it, and we found so much deepening just through getting hot and then getting cold, and having that physical relationship, but also overcoming like a lot of the mental stuff. Yeah. And it helped me through a lot of my life. So during COVID, we were in talks with another amazing person who's done some amazing things in this space. It didn't end up manifesting between us, but we definitely went down a path where we're going to do this. But it also felt like a really weird time because we're like, can we ever get together with people? Like, will Nectar even open again?
You're not sure.
Are we going to build a space that is communal, or, you know, like that can hold people when we don't even know if people can ever leave their home again, and so on. There was too many unknowns at that time. And it didn't feel like timing is everything in life. So we kind of shelved the idea. And then Sat went to a 10-day Vipassana meditation. And while he was there, he just got an insight like, let's do this. We need to do this. It's going to be beautiful for the community, for people who visit the island. It's, you know, it's going to be something to do here as well in the winter, but when it's beautiful, and it's naturally like people come here to slow down. You're not here to be like, so what's there to do? But it is nice to have one little thing to do when you come. And so Miss is going to offer that hopefully to people who are interested in contrast therapy. And I'm really excited about it. So yes, the idea was seeded many, many moons ago. And the name actually came to me in November when I was on my own silent retreat on Bowen Island. At another space, and I was walking through the forest, and it was one of those like November mornings when the sun was rising, and there's, you know, beautiful vibrant moss because it's been raining now for a few weeks at that time, and there was this rising mist coming off of the moss, and I was like, that's the name, because on this land in the mornings in the winter specifically, there's this haziness, and mist to me, I was thinking of like the liminal space and the space between, and you kind of move into an altered state when you go into a sauna, and then you go into a cold bath, and then you relax. All your worries and the things that felt so real, they soften back a bit, and it has a meditative quality, absolutely. And there's this mistiness, like you're not as in the best possible way, like the clarity isn't quite there, but through, and then the mist clears, and then you get these hits of like, okay, this is it, this is the way. And so I love that. And it's also a byproduct of like putting water, well, steam, but it's a misty, putting water on fire. And it worked with the elemental theme that we're going with. And it seems like such a simple name, but actually connecting with a name it's a big thing. It's a big deal. It is. It's really hard, actually. Well, and to find something that's not taken. Yeah. Like taken in the sense, you know what I mean? Yes, like names don't belong to anyone. Right. Taken like, okay, there's 10 other businesses locally that are called Miss. That's not going to work. Of course. Because I really like the word ember as well, but it's like every barbecue company and stuff is called ember.
Just coming here for a little roast.
Yeah. And there was like, a few. There was a few other names. There was another name that we'd actually decided upon, but it felt a little too hard for people to remember. So that's fair. The name.
Okay, so Mist it is.
Mist it is.
I think it captures what you're doing beautifully. I think it's excellent, you know, and I'm looking forward to the space. So I'll
we're really excited. So opening soon, fall 2024. We're building everything off site at the moment. Again, they're not panelized. We're actually prefabbing everything. So we designed it all, same thing, different company, but and they're bringing the buildings on the back of a truck, and then we had to build a road specifically for the crane to come onto, and then
is that why the paving started happening? Is that the reason for paving the driveway?
No, the paving was just paving. If anyone's ever paved a long driveway, you know it's hella expensive.
Yes, so that came later. Very happy that you have though, because it's very nice to drive in. It was always beautiful, but now it's helpful, especially getting up. I think people had a hard time getting up sometimes in the gravel.
The paving is definitely a nice little investment.
Thank you.
Certain parts there's a public road that we weren't able to pave because it's not ours, and then there's pieces that are riparian zones. So anyway, it's not all of it is paved for specific reasons, but we had to build a little road up to Mist, and that's where the crane's going to come with all the buildings, and then because of the weight of the building and the reach of the crane, they can only go so far. So it's engineering. Luckily, my husband's an engineer.
I was going to say, you got lucky again there. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, of course.
He says that I'm the gas and he's the brake, so.
A good balance, you know. I had a few other curiosities, just, you know, getting to know you and knowing about this space. And of course, it was, I don't know, it must have been about 4 or 5 months ago now. How long ago was it that you had your feature in Condé Nast? How long ago was that? It was about roughly that time, I would say. Yeah. And maybe you can tell me about that a little bit, because is that something that you I don't know how that even works.
Yeah, I know.
Do you like write into that and say I want to be featured or whatever? Because like I've done that sometimes. I'm like, hello, you know, whatever, because you're trying to make it, you know.
Yeah.
You know. So how did that come to be?
I think it's a good question, because I think maybe, you know, whomever is still listening, hopefully this is interesting.
Many people. Hello.
Whoever's still interested. You know, I think as a small business owner, there's many ways that you can go about that. And we've always been of the mindset, like, it just comes.
Yep.
And again, like I am
forcing.
very grateful.
Yes.
We have been featured in a lot of magazines, both printed and digital. We've had a lot of awesome coverage, and you know what it comes from? People just having a great experience. Yeah. And then a lot of our guests are really beautiful and humble, and they don't speak to who they are. And I like that, because we treat everybody the same here. It doesn't matter who you are. We've actually had we've had quite a lot of famous people stay here. We've had people who are really big in their fields, and later they tell me, like, I had such a great experience and I want to write about it. Yeah. So that's how it came to be. It just wasn't something, no, we didn't write to them. We didn't say, hey,
feature us.
No.
Yeah, right.
And I would love it if we could continue on that way, even with Miss. Like, I think that it's going to have, again, its own energy, and it's going to get its own publicity. And yes, I think, like, there's amazing PR people, and I think probably for some businesses it has great amount of value. Yeah. To work with an awesome person, and we have worked with some, but for us, it works better just in an organic way.
You know, and I found that too, like in my time of just doing what I do, I started with the yoga stuff, and then the photography and all the other things kind of came along afterward. Mm-hmm. And I love the yoga, but I was really trying to like be a business owner, so I was like really trying so hard, and it was like, I wanted to survive. I wanted to also, yes, make money in a good way, but like I wanted to make money, and I would always like try really hard. I was like, you know, emailing people, messaging people, like hire me, whatever. With all of these other things now, I don't have that. I don't try too hard to like get it. It just kind of comes, and I find that when the intention is correct and the heart is there, and you're even being like heart led, intuitively led, and you're just being true. Like this whole space is just true to you, to your husband, to the people that are here. There's no need to reach out. People will feel that energy. It's not a forced place. It's not like something where you're like, I really need to get featured and I want to be seen, whatever. Yeah. People will see it and they feel the right energy coming from it. Yeah. And it just becomes, because you're just honoring your heart. Like you're honoring your soul, your dreams, your goals, your visions. And all the things just start coming to you when you're very true to self.
I think so. I hope so. I hope that for all people.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, that's how it seemed to flow for us. And yeah, I think when you line up with your purpose, hopefully there is a flow to it.
Yeah. And did that feel like a big thing? Like when you saw that you were featured, like did they even write to you saying we were about to feature you?
Yeah,
or did it just like...
they did. But honestly, like, and I'm saying this with all the humbleness.
Of course, yeah.
We've been featured in a lot, so
right.
It's really beautiful, and keep it coming. Like I love it.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, like you're like, thank you, and but it's not like the first one.
Right.
I mean,
right.
And I say that with humbleness. Like I'm grateful, but it's when it's been like hundreds or something, you're like, yeah, it's really nice.
Right. I
it's not as big of a.
It. Yeah, because I feel like I've only been like I've known of this space for quite some time, but I've only been having some sort of, I guess if you want to call it, attachment to this place for about a year now.
Yeah.
And so for me, that was my first like visual of being like, oh, okay. And I feel like I've seen some of the other features or whatever, but I was like, that's quite the thing, you know. It's really beautiful to witness, having now a knowing.
Yeah.
Because
like we were just
that,
in West Coast, it's called West Coast Homes and Design. It's a little magazine insert in the Vancouver Sun. It's really lovely. They featured us, and there's like lots of beautiful things like that, and I think that it's a testament to what we're doing. And also, if I'm honest, just for business owners, it doesn't do as much as you thought.
As you think. Right.
It's nice. Yeah, it's really, really nice. But I don't get too excited about it now, because I'm like, you think you're going to get this influx of lots of bookings or something. And I think more than anything, it's like that word of mouth piece or that recognition.
This is huge, yeah.
That it's sort of like gets to people that maybe otherwise wouldn't have seen us, which is really nice because they have a different audience than maybe is typically Nectar.
Yeah.
But I will say, like, because one time at our old location, we were the Canadian press wrote an article, and we were in hundreds of newsletters and publications that week. It was insane. I didn't realize how much of a pull that they had, but everyone used the article and the picture. It was beautiful, but it was surprising because I was like, it's like doesn't actually lead, I don't know, maybe as much business as right away as you might. Right. But I think long term, these things, the seed is planted, all and then people are like, oh yeah, Nectar, I know about that, or and then maybe 5 years, because we get a lot of people that say, oh, I've been thinking about coming for 5 years or 7 years or something, and then one day they do, and it's wonderful. So my dogs are barking in the background.
Yeah, it's okay. It's good.
They're forest and fern. They think
they're doing what they do. They're protecting the land.
They're actually very, very friendly, but
just doing what
dogs do.
Being dogs. Yeah. My kind of, I guess not final, but my feeling is that I want to share with you some of my favorite specific spots of the grounds and the spaces, and I'd be curious to know if there's places that you also have certain favorites of in the space itself, because like the forest tub, that whole zone, is that what I call it? Is that what I need to call it? Okay, thank you, because I was like, I don't want to get it incorrect. That space is one of my favorites, not really even because of the tub, like it's just the way, is a cedar in there?
Yeah, it's all cedar.
It's amazing. And the way that you have everything angled, I think it's a 45.
Yeah.
Like, and the way the wood is angled and the way that the light comes in. First of all, as a photographer, fantastic. I remember like when I first came in, I was like, oh my God, I gotta photograph this space. I love the cutout and being able to view the alders through there. Yeah. And that space, in and of just as a design, and the way it was done and all of those things is like it's one of my favorite spots. And the design itself, like I just love the way that everything is designed. I just feel like I love the wood and like black and white and like these tones, and now I understand the influence a little bit more, so that's really beautiful, I would say that's kind of my favorite spot, and somewhere I felt very like attracted to go or to be. And then everything else, obviously, there's not a spot that isn't like, but maybe you have a spot that feels like, or maybe you put a lot of work into that spot and you're like, that spot really made me go through it, but I really like it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you about that area that currently houses our forest tub. Yeah. What's going to change, we're taking the tub out because when mist comes on, we're not going to have the tub anymore.
That makes sense.
And then it's going to have like a communal little like propane fire pit area.
Nice.
So that in the winter, because the thing is when it rains here, we can't really have a fire outside. And that's the only season that we can, because they have a fire ban on Bowen from April to October.
Okay.
Unless it's like an enclosed fire, there's a whole regulation around it. So we want like a space that's year round that people can use. So I really love that space, and it was inspired by like kind of a spa-like feeling and a little bit of Japanese, like a little touch of Japanese vibe in there. And then, of course, using like local materials is really important. But the part of the property that is probably one of my most favorites is up at the top. And currently the trail is a bit cut off because of the construction, but it'll be reconnected. And there's a beautiful lookout from up there, and it overlooks the valley, and you can see the changes of all the trees in each season. Like the alders drop their leaves and they change color a little bit in the fall, and then in the winter it has a very different feeling than in the summer. And it's just it's connected to Nectar, of course, it's on the same land, but it's just a really beautiful vantage point. Right. And then just generally I really like the lodge because a lot of people hang out in there, and there's been a lot of, and the dome, because we only do sacred work in here.
Yes.
And so there's an energy in here that is beautiful, and I know we've held a lot of people through a lot of things.
Yeah.
And that's of most important to me. I want to witness my own evolution of consciousness, but I'm also really passionate about witnessing others. Yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you. Do you feel that there's anything you want that we didn't touch on, or anything you want to share, anything you want to hold space for?
Well, we need 4 more hours, but I think maybe there's a 2 and
maybe we need to
3.
return to this.
Because we touched on a lot of different things, from the design to where I come from and so on. But I think the main thing that I want to close with is Nectar. Our mission here is to seed the awareness of consciousness. Mm-hmm. We are conscious, like that obviously is our nature, but life gets in the way sometimes. And I just want to acknowledge that, being human, it's kind of tough. It's not all light and butterflies and joy all the time. And I think for me, just on acknowledging that, like it can be challenging being human. I would just want to name that in the space, because sometimes in these worlds, there can be some bypassing that happens, and I see it in a lot of people. I sometimes witness it in myself. So acknowledging the light and the dark, first of all, and just naming that. And then also naming that there's a way through it all. And one of my ways has been through daily practice and being determined and steadfast with that. And that's something that I struggled with for a long time, such a long time, is having a good morning ritual and routine that sets the tone for my day. And I know this feels like, oh God, like why do we always have to do something in order to get somewhere? But we kind of do. We have to, this is the path of action. Mm-hmm. And really walking authentically. And I mean, what you share as a teacher, it should be obviously in your practice. That seems fairly, like a no-brainer. But I think a lot of teachers we're human, and we're tired, and sometimes our own practices fall away. So for me, the thing that's helped me to not only create all this and to continue to create more is that really specific daily morning ritual that I have with myself and my husband, which we've been doing outside on our deck in the summer season, or we do inside of our house. And you don't need a lot of space, and you don't need something special. You just need to actually do it. Right. So that's the first thing from a personal perspective. And the second thing following that is that this is a time in my life where I've taken on more than I ever have. I have lots of staff. I won't put the number out, but there's lots of people that I'm managing in terms of their own energy, their work. Like we support people's livelihood here at Nectar, their families. I have many businesses that I'm running and operating. And I also have more space than I've ever had because of my ability to let things go and know when to drop something and know when to loosen the reins and actually trust someone else to let them do it. And that's come through a lot of trial and error and a lot of hanging on. And so actually being able to soften your grip in life, whatever you're doing, is super, super important. And with that, more energy flows. So I've found in the letting go, I've opened up so much more possibility. And we've been attracting the most beautiful people into this space, as I said. And this is a space of healing and a space of surrender. And I see the difference when people come here and when they leave. Like, they are the same person, but they're a completely different person as well. And I don't, our experiences are mostly 2 nights or 4, but that's not a long amount of time, but it's big enough to see a difference. And that's through practice, through ritual, and through dedication. Mm-hmm. So we can say all that, we can think, yes, what we think is important, what we speak is important. Our action is very important as well. And I think, walk your walk, talk your talk, keep doing your practice, and then all will come to you. Yeah.
Thank you so much
Thanks.
for sharing this space with me. Thank you for sharing your wisdom, your knowing, your story. Yeah. Thank you.
Many stories. Thank you. Nice to know you.